Oh no, some comedian made a joke that's over the line. Should we cancel them, or has political correctness gone too far? Yeah, the culture war is about jokes sometimes. Now, why not? Some people think comedians should have a special pass to tell it like it is, while others think comedians have a responsibility to choose their targets carefully and use their position as comedians to speak truth to power and, everybody together, don't punch down. Whether they're taking the stuffed shirts down a few notches or not, a good comic should know where the power lies. After all, there's nothing interesting about kicking someone who's already oppressed. Joining a pylon is not funny or brave, only cruel. Comedians have always pushed lines. Lenny Bruce, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. A list of comedians who tangled with censors doubles as a list of the greatest stand-ups ever. And also Andrew Dice Clay. Comedians regularly force us to ask, how far is too far? And that conversation is important. It starts with a joke, but it leads to brass tacks talk about the harm speech can do, and ways to make public conversations more inclusive and mindful. Now, it sucks that a group of oppressed people usually have to stand up and defend their right to exist during these news cycles, and nobody should ever have to do that. But freedom of speech versus responsibility toward others is a topic that needs to come up regularly. To be clear, even though that conversation is good for society, the comedian whose joke started it is not off the hook. Johnny Stand-Up doesn't get a pat on the back. He's not a philosopher sage starting conversations. He's a troll who hurt people to get the attention he wanted. It's fine and fair. People who make jokes that hurt folks face consequences. Remember that most famous stand-ups don't really get cancelled either. They just change venue from Comedy Central to Fox News, from Netflix to Joe Rogan, or lay low for a few months. But if it's good to have the conversation, we should let comedians be offensive, right? Right? Well, first of all, just because a transgressive joke starts in some stand-up's act doesn't mean it ends there. Let's call this the Apu effect. If there was an Indian kid in my middle school class in 1988 and I wanted to show the world I was a crappy person, I'd have had to think up a whole bunch of racist stuff to say to that kid all on my own. But in 1993, I wouldn't have had to think much at all, because Apu Nahasapima Petalan was on The Simpsons then. So I had tons of material just sitting there for me. Simpsons didn't mean to do this. Simpsons didn't make people into crappy people, but they sure made it easier for crappy people to show what they were by providing them with racist jokes against Indians. Jokes that hurt women, people of color, LGBTQ folks, or any other group, give ammunition and also permission to bullies. Most of the racist, sexist, or crappy things I cringe to remember doing when I was a boy were done in imitation of something I'd seen somewhere. Yeah, there are content warnings, age restrictions, and parents should have those talks with their kids, but the fact is, a transgressive joke doesn't stay in the place it first appeared, and that needs to be part of the calculation as we figure out where offensive comedy belongs in our society. So why do comedians keep going over the line anyway? Well, there are laughs there. But it's not as simple as cross-line make money, or talent scouts would be on Fortnite chat instead of going to open mics. Going up to the line but not over is hard, and doing that for a whole career is really hard. Watching a stand-up comic is kind of like going to a flying trapeze act. Those acrobats fly through the air, but they always catch the bar at the end. An acrobat has to know gravity exactly, because they go right up to the edge of what you can do before gravity crashes you. And instead of crashing, they land safely. After they land safely, we can cheer. They pulled it off! Whew. Transgressive comedy is like the trapeze, except instead of flirting with the limits of gravity, they're flirting with the boundary of offensiveness. Some comedians eat on that line and need to know it the way acrobats know gravity, where to the tiniest jot the line is. Which parts of the line are squishy, and which parts are diamond hard? When a stand-up puts a toe over the line and dances back, we laugh, just like we cheer when the acrobat lands safely. They did it! Whew! For a second I thought we were going to see someone die. Free speech absolutists don't have to like it, but here's the truth. For transgressive comedy to work, the line has to be there. If you can say anything at all, it would be like a flying trapeze in zero gravity. Yeah, 40 flip twists in a row is a lot, I guess, but with no danger of a crash, it's no longer impressive, and with no safe landing, I don't know when to cheer. That line of too far makes stand-up, the way gravity makes acrobatics, because the comedian might put a whole foot over the line one night instead of just a toe, and that danger creates the payoff. The audience trusts the comedian to bring them up to the line, but not over. And the comedian rewards that trust with a laugh that feels transgressive, but didn't go too far. That's the deal. If you don't understand or respect that line, there's no trust there, so there's no act. That's why edgelord is a term of contempt for internet losers and not a popular genre of comedy. There's no art to a bull in the china shop shouting, "I'm so edgy!" It doesn't take skill, just contempt for the targets of their jokes and for the audience. All that being said, the trapeze analogy breaks down in two spots. First, gravity never changes. Acrobats only need to learn it once. But the line of offense never stops moving. Every year it moves a little in a few different spots. Words you can't say anymore, topics that are no longer taboo. The lines are way different than in 1995. So when Chris Rock or Jerry Seinfeld say they can't connect with today's audiences, this is why. They didn't pay enough attention to the lines changing and didn't adjust. Of course audiences are different today. Get with it, or step aside. Breakdown 2. Nobody thinks, I could do that, and climbs a trapeze tower. It'd be messy if they did, but people do just that all the time with comedy, as in the Apu effect I described a moment ago. Flying trapeze looks like it took years of training, but the years a stand-up spends learning exactly how far a joke can go don't show. The part we see is the easy part. Anyone can talk into a microphone. The hard part is knowing what you can and can't say, and it's really hard. Chad Meatnoggin doesn't see the years Johnny Stand-Up spent learning how to read a room. He only sees the laugh Johnny got. So while Chad would never try a trapeze jump, he'll absolutely bring Johnny Stand-Up's joke home and use it on his friends. When we saw Apu on The Simpsons in the 90s, some people thought, whoa, this is racist. All the Chad Meatnoggins of the world thought, well, Simpsons did it, so... And every Indo-American who grew up in the 90s knows how that turned out. If Chad Meatnoggin tried the acrobat's jump, he'd end up in traction, but he doesn't recognize that he's attempting something with the same degree of difficulty when he brings home that trans joke he heard on the Netflix special. So when a joke takes aim at a group that's already a target for bullying and violence, yeah, Johnny Stand-Up is giving people permission to add to that bullying and violence. Instead of giving people permission to laugh at the emperor who has no clothes, he's inviting us to join a mob. It's jokes. It's funny. Our guard is down, and it gets easier to listen to the tiny voice saying, "Say it. It was funny when Johnny Stand-Up said it." Instead of the voice saying, "Don't say it. It's mean," and choose to hurt someone. So like the warning after the commercial break on wrestling shows, listen kids, it's amazing what stand-ups do, and it's important that from time to time we think about how speech can be free but also responsible, edgy and human. But also, don't try this at home.